This is everything we know about One Punch Man Season 3 so far. Yesterday we got the first official One Punch Man Season 3 teaser trailer, highlighting this absolutely awesome fight between Garo and two monsters, but we've actually gotten quite a bit of other noteworthy news along with it that I think is getting muddled in the hype of the trailer itself. So what I wanted to do today is break down everything we know about Season 3, and break down what's going on in the trailer itself, of course. I know there's probably a lot of you watching that are anime only, so I'm going to keep this all spoiler free, you don't gotta worry about it. Maybe I'll get into some spoiler stuff towards the end, but I'll let you know when we get there. So just starting off with the trailer, and if you don't want to hear about the trailer, you already know what's going on here, you've already seen it a million times like me, then go ahead and skip to this timestamp so we can get into the other stuff, kind of the behind the scenes things, that I think carry some big news as well. But anyway, the trailer. Basically the entirety of this trailer is this awesome fight sequence between Garo and these two monsters. I was definitely liking the choreography of the fight itself. There was a good amount of smooth, continuous movement, not too many jump cuts from one pose to another. And that scene where Garo gets flung towards the electric cables and then jumps back, that is just some undeniable smooth animation. My favorite part is definitely at the very end of this trailer, but we'll get to that in a second. First, what I want to talk about is what's going on as this fight sequence is also going on. If you were listening and watching the trailer with subtitles, you can see that we're getting this monologue from the voice actor that plays Dr. Genus in the anime. So you can safely assume that it is Dr. Genus talking here. And as Garo fights, he's explaining the existence of something called the limiter. And what he says the limiter is this biological cap placed on every single human that limits their potential. He explains this as some kind of self-preservation mechanism that essentially protects oneself from becoming too powerful for their own body to handle. He also explains that obtaining a certain amount of power for a biological being that's outside of the parameters for their limiter usually leads to them going crazy and spiraling out of control. So essentially monsterfying. But, and this is where our boy finally comes in, he explains that there is one person that was different. Saitama was someone that was born as just a regular guy with no special abilities, but through sheer effort and perseverance, he quite literally broke through his limits and is the only known person alive to ever moved his limiter. That's what lets him be so incredibly strong. So if you're anime only, it's kind of an exciting thing to find out because it's kind of uncovering the secrets of Saitama's power finally. And why this monologue is super important as well is because it kind of plays into what happens at the very end of this trailer. This monologue and this fight sequence between Garo and these monsters are directly related. And it's easy to see why when we look at the end of this trailer, because we skip from seeing Saitama and hearing his hero theme to a shot of Garo standing there looking menacing, and all of a sudden his back starts to kind of like morph and beef up, almost like he instantly put on like 20 pounds of muscle or something. And then of course we get probably the best shot in the entire trailer, which is this one right here of Garo just staring so menacingly off in the distance. A one-for-one image of how he looks in the manga. Like it literally looks like they just colored the panel, added a filter to it, and then boom, that's the shot that we're getting, which is a good thing by the way. So as I was saying, why this monologue that Dr. Genus was giving as Garo was fighting was so important to Garo himself is because at some point as he's explaining the limiter, he explains that obtaining a certain level of power past one's limits could lead them to turn into some kind of ravenous monster. And as we all know, that's pretty much been Garo's main goal the entire time we've known him. He wants to be the absolute evil and he wants to become a real monster. So when we're seeing this like weird mutation come from Garo, and also taking consideration that earlier in his fight, he was literally electrocuted and was completely fine, we can kind of notice that it's starting to look that Garo is not as human as he used to be, or he might not even be human at all anymore. Meaning, although Saitama has removed his limiter, it seems like Garo's doing something to his right now. What's going to happen, we don't know yet. But what we do know is the animation studio that will be producing Season 3. Many people thought it was MAPPA, but they were completely wrong. Surprisingly, it's JC's staff once again. And I say once again because they are the studio that took care of Season 2, and of course this has led to people hating it right away. And I kind of don't blame them. Season 2 was definitely a step down from Season 1. I feel like most people kind of agree with that. But look, to JC's staff's defense, when producing Season 2 of the anime, they didn't have nearly enough time to take care of the content or to do it justice the way we would have wanted them to. And there are some signs in this trailer that make it seem that some of the bad habits and complaints that the fanbase had towards the animation studio for the second season, I think they took those complaints in consideration and made some necessary changes. Like for example, that super ugly metallic effect that they would use for Genos and all the robots you saw in Season 2. Like I feel like that's something they would have used on this bug monster shell or something, and it seems like that's not the case and hopefully won't be the case for the entirety of the season. Another thing that a lot of people complained about though, that I think people are still complaining about with this trailer, is that there's a lot of like still images and not enough fluid action, and that was definitely an issue in season 2, there was a lot of just like still image shots, like kind of slideshowy looking scenes. But why I feel like that doesn't really pertain to this trailer is because it's just like a 30-second trailer, guys. And honestly, I think they nailed the scene pretty well with how it went down in the manga. Like, they seem like they're sticking pretty true to the manga with the content here. And of course, that's usually pretty welcomed, right? I think JC Staff got dealt a bad hand with season 2. Like, they didn't have enough time to do it, and they had such high expectations from season 1 because it was such like a god tier season of animation that there was no possible way they could live up to expectations. But right now, it seems like expectations are pretty low, so I think people should give JC Staff a chance to at least show us more before we start passing judgment again. Now, as I mentioned earlier, what's probably my favorite part of the entire trailer, and honestly, I kind of overlooked it the first time I watched it because I wasn't so much listening as I was watching. I was just so enthralled with watching the trailer itself. The part I'm talking about is at the very end, when after we get this image of Saitama, we start hearing his theme with this black screen. So we're getting hyped thinking like, all right, Saitama's about to pop out here and do something. But instead it kind of switches up to this different guitar theme that's like much more menacing and evil. And that's when we get the zoomed in shot of Garo and get this awesome final shot. I'm assuming this is signaling that this is now going to be Garo's theme, which I mean, I didn't mind the one from season 2, but this one sounds insane, which makes perfect sense because the guy that created the music for this theme has created music for season 1 and also season 2. And on that note, that brings us to, I guess the main reason why I wanted to make this video, because there's some stuff in the end credits and some other stuff that has come out along with this trailer that I think gives us some more important information on where things are going and where they're at, starting with who exactly is working on this season as we know right now. Because at the very end of the trailer, we get these end credits that mention some of the people working on it, one of them being Makoto Miyazaki, who, as I said, was the music composer for season 1 as well as season 2. And another important thing to notice is that the series composition, which I believe is like the scripting and the writing of how things are going to go for the season, is going to be directed by Tomohiro Suzuki, who is also a part of season 1 and also carried over to season 2. And we also see Chikashi Kubota, who is also a carryover from both seasons. He'll be a character designer again, alongside seemingly some new faces, one of which being Ryosuke Shirakawa. I looked into some of the character design work they've done in the past, and the only noteworthy one, or one that I, could recognize myself, was working on Violet Evergarden. So if, any of you that have watched Violet Evergarden like the character design for those characters, then maybe you'll be excited for this. And the final character designer being credited here is Shinjiro Kuroda, who I want to highlight specifically for two reasons. One, because when I was trying to look into them and trying to see like what other major works they've been a part of to get a good idea of their style, all I could find was these shows that I've never heard of before, like The Executioner and Her Way of Life, along with Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in Dungeon 4 or 5? I don't know. My Roman numerics, they're not very good. I'm assuming these are like isekai anime. That's what they sound like. But the second reason I want to highlight this person in particular is because another release that we got along with this trailer is a character design of Saitama. And along with the character design, we also found out that we're going to be getting a new character design every month. So we're going to just be getting this image of what a character is going to be looking like in the anime. And if you notice, Saitama looks a lot more, I don't know how to explain it, like more true to the manga. I feel like the theme here is sticking more true to the manga, how things look in the manga, in terms of just like texture and vibe, I guess. But the fact that Kuroda drew this character design of Saitama means that they're definitely going to be having a pretty heavy hand in how the characters in season 3 are actually going to look. I'm not super well versed on how animation studio processes go, like who does what and who tells who to do what. So if anybody wants to correct me in the comments here and let me know that, maybe these people being credited at the end of this trailer really aren't going to be working on character designs, or I'm kind of making their role seem more important than it is, feel free to, correct me in the comments, make us all a little bit smarter, right? So I think the last important thing to touch on here is kind of the very last thing that we see in the trailer that gives us an idea of how far the anime actually is coming along and how long it might end up being. So first we get these words that say supreme strength versus ultimate fear, which is alluding to the imminent fight between Saitama and Garo. Saitama's supreme strength, Garo is ultimate fear. So of course they could just be doing this to hype up the trailer itself, to hype up season 3, but someone that's read the manga could take this as, hey, they're going to be covering the fight between Saitama and Garo in season 3, which again, for those of you that have read the manga, would seem like a pretty tall task to do within one anime season, or at least do it effectively, because there is a ton of content to cover in this Monster Association arc. So unless there's like 25 plus episodes coming out in a single season, I don't want to see the entirety of this arc covered in a single season. You know what I mean? Sure, I want to see it finally all animated, but I'm willing to be patient instead of having them chop out really important content and putting together this super rush season just for the sake of getting it all covered. I'll let you guys know exactly where I think season 3 is going to end at the very end of this video, just so you know. If you're anime only, you don't get spoiled. But the very last important thing I want to talk about generally is this ending image where it says that One Punch Man season 3 is in production. We don't get a date or anything. And I think coupling that along with the fact that we get news that we're getting a new character design every month, like they're going to be rolling these out monthly, it tells me that we're probably not getting this season this year. Which, I mean, it's fine because, again, I want them to take their time with this. I don't want them to mess it up. I want to get as good of a quality anime season as possible, and if I have to wait a whole year for it, maybe even a little more, than fine, as long as I know stuff is happening. My guess is that they might be gearing up to release for spring of next year, for the spring season. We got to remember that these promotional trailers, a lot of the times they're made on their own, like independent of anything that's actually going on with the physical animation of season 3. And what I mean by that is that this scene might not even actually be like as it is in season 3. This might have just been made for this specific trailer, right? The animations are probably going to look a little bit more cleaned up. There's probably going to be like slightly different coloring and filtering to fit the vibe of the rest of the season. So just because we're seeing this scene of the anime doesn't mean that everything up until this scene is already done. For all we know, this might be the only thing that they've done so far, along with the one character design that we got of Saitama. So maybe we get pleasantly surprised and find out that they've been working a lot more on this season than we originally thought. Like maybe they're already pretty far into animation. We don't know yet, but if that were the case, we might get a fall release this year. I think that's the best case scenario, like 6 months, 7 months from now or something. But with that being said, I had some time to think of where I think it would make sense for season 3 to end. And I've made an entire video on this before, but hoping that there's like 20 episodes at least. Maybe they can make it work in 12, but I don't know. I'll feel kind of iffy about that if they do it in 12. I think the perfect place to end season 3 is the fight between Saitama and Monster King Orochi. Ending it with that fight and also ending it with Garo's official transformation into Monster Garo. I think it would be the perfect cliffhanger to leave off in season 3 and build up a ton of hype for season 4. Again though, I'm generally super excited about this trailer. I personally loved watching it. Even though it was super short, it was all that I needed to be super hyped for season 3 all over again. Look, I know a lot of you are probably upset that JC Staff is going to be animating this season, but hey, let's give him a shot. I think it's safe to say that this trailer at least piqued our collective interest. Maybe we're willing to forgive again. We'll see. But let me know what you guys think about this trailer and all this news in the comments, guys. Have an absolutely wonderful day, afternoon, evening, whatever, and I'll see you guys in the next video.